You're saying that I'm on now? Okay, for all of you out there in Streamland, just know I had 3 different signs, so I didn't mean to miss the opening, but welcome. We're glad they're here, aren't we? Woohoo! Welcome to Wednesday night, and thank you for being with us. You know, today was the day when Pastors Larry and Tiz came in, and they tore up the stage and set up the background for their filming for Larry Huck Ministries. So if you walked in the sanctuary and kind of thought, ooh, the atmosphere feels good, it must have been a really strong prayer group that came beforehand. Well, there was a strong prayer group, praise God. But there was also incredible teaching today. And I think Pastor Larry is on a pathway where God is downloading some incredible revelation to him, which I think is why we've ended up having a prayer summit, a boot camp, where we learned how to pray authoritatively. And now we're in an area where the blessings that God is giving us, our financial pieces, we can learn better how to manage that. Because don't you know, God wants to bless us, and what we want to do is to respond by being able to help others. Amen? Well, thank you, Stream family, for being here, and we're not going to take any more time. Pastor Troy, it is all yours.
God bless you. Thank you guys for being here again. Another week. I know there's a lot of people coming, and I hear traffic is crazy, and there's a lot going on out there. But we're going to dig in a little bit deeper this week, but I'm going to do just like I did last week. I'm going to share a few truths with you before I bring up our guests to kind of get us grounded and built up for where he's going to take us. And he may decide to skip over some things that I share with you real quick after I share them, because y'all know how I do. So tonight we're talking about filling our buckets is what he's going to talk about, filling our buckets. And so he'll get into this real deeply. And so filling our buckets deals with being able to save and invest and prepare for the future. And so last week he talks about building your savings plan and a savings objective. And I had someone that was here last week, I won't call them out by name, but they came to me and said, Pastor, I realized after looking at my savings and what I've been spending, I spent over $17,000 at Burger King last year. And I spent $9,100 at Starbucks. And this person told me that in all last year, I thought I couldn't afford a new truck. But I realized I gave my new truck to Starbucks and to Burger King. So because I didn't realize where my money was going. And so some of you, as you go through and create your spending plan, you may see some of these anomalies where you can readjust your spending so that you can start to live the prosperous life that God is actually blessing you with. But because you are not properly managing or being good stewards right now, you don't see that you actually have the funds that you need to do the things that God has called you to do, but you just misappropriated a few things because you saw it as, well, it's just $2 for this and it's just $6 for this. And that's what he was telling me. He said, you know, he was spending about $6.75, $7 on a cup of coffee every day. Ended up being $9,100. That's a lot of money for coffee. Or like our speaker said last week, what was it? Hot water over brown beans. That's a lot of money for that. So savings helps us to plan for the future. And in particular, it helps us with recognizing the power of a thing. I want us to kind of think about the power that we have in this thing that you may or may not have heard of called compounding interest. Anybody ever heard of compounding interest? If you have not run the numbers on compounding interest, you really should. People that don't understand the power of compounding interest, they earn it, and those who don't understand the power of compounding interest, they either spend it or pay it. So if you understand it, you earn it. If you don't understand it, you're paying it out. Do you want to be on the receiving end or the paying end? So that's totally up to you. So in studying to kind of give you guys a foundation for John coming tonight, I was looking at some stuff today and I got in deep. And I'm going to take this next couple moments and show you how practical the Bible is. It blows me away to see just what God says about something as practical as saving or investing. And it honestly built my faith. It built my faith. So I'm going to give you a couple things real quick. And so you don't have to follow, you don't have to flip to these scriptures, but I'm going to give you these passages that I found today as I was just doing some study. And these are all straight out of the Word of God. Let's start with a couple of Proverbs when it comes to investing. One first principle that I want to give you from the book of Troy before we get to Proverbs is don't try to get rich quick. Don't try to do more than you're able to do in a season when you may not be able to do it. Anybody ever heard all these schemes that people tell you? Well, if you join this, you can get this much this fast. See, I don't know if I'm just cheap or if I'm just a skeptic. But when that stuff comes to me, I'm like, I don't know about that. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go on the record and tell you, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So I tend to, he said Bernie made off. Yeah, and he made off with some of my money too. Yeah, I remember Bernie. I'm still holding that against him. Proverbs 13:11 says, he who gathers money little by little makes it grow. He who gathers little by little makes it grow. If someone comes and offers you an opportunity that sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There you go. See, you remember that. So, Ecclesiastes 11:2 says, he gives portions to 7, yes, to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come on the land. Do you know what that speaks to? Speaks to diversity. It's a principle of diversification in Ecclesiastes 11:2. And it blows me away that the Old Testament of the Bible is speaking to financial principles or even a financial principle like diversification. Because we all know that there's always some season or storm that may come. And so, which takes me to, is it Luke? I think Luke was my next one. Proverbs 24 says, by wisdom is a house built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. See, you want to increase your savings, you better make sure you are investing in things you understand. See, a lot of times we jump in and we make investments in things that we don't quite understand because we feel good about it. But I'm a little different than most people with my money. I don't need to feel good about it. I need to know about it. And if I don't know about it, I don't mess with it. So like when it comes to calls and options and puts and I know y'all probably looking at me like, what in the world is he talking about? These are financial terms. You might want to look them up. I know a little bit about them, but I don't know enough about them to be comfortable with putting all my eggs in those baskets. You ever went to a mutual fund person and they want you to put all your eggs in one basket and all these, and what they call diversification on that front, because you're talking to a mutual fund specialist, they want you to do all your eggs in one basket. Everything's a mutual fund. All of these different mutual funds. I'm going to have you put all your money in mutual funds. I don't have all my money in mutual funds. I got a little bit in mutual funds. But I got some in real estate. I've got some in insurance investments. I've got some in some business opportunity investments. So I have a diversified portfolio. And one of the things that I've learned through life is I've learned, and my father taught me this. And you know, most of us don't listen to our parents. But this has proven to be true in my life, is that you have to learn how to not work for your money, but make your money work for you. Because when you get to where your money's working for you, your money working for you is what brings wealth and prosperity into your life. We can be going to work on a job, but if you go work on a job 9 to 5, you know what that is? That's just a job. But if you have investments and savings and things that you have your money designated to do, your money begins to make money for you even when you're sleeping. And people tell me I don't sleep much, which I really don't. But I don't sleep much because I'm worried about money. I don't sleep much because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. What's my next move? What can I do here? What can I do there? That's why I don't sleep much. I'm very focused and I'm very targeted. And so you got to get to be a little bit more focused, and you can't be all over the map and all over the place with what you do. And I'm a living witness to tell you that God will bless whatever you do as long as you do it as unto him. See, we are blessed to be a blessing. So when he knows he can get it from you, he'll get it to you. So I never covet the blessings of God when they come on my life. I'm always looking, how can I sow a seed? How can I be a blessing to somebody else? Even when I don't have what I think I should have, I'm looking for a place that I can be a blessing. Why? Because I've learned through life that when I sow those seeds, I reap harvest in different places. Sometimes I might not reap the harvest in my bank account. I might reap it in my health. I might reap it in the salvation of my children. I might reap it in the salvation of other family members. But I am blessed to be a blessing. Luke 14:28 says this: for which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest he's laid the foundation and is not able to finish? All those who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. See, I'm looking at my future right now. And as I'm building for the future. Yeah, we have a lot of wants right now. You have your needs, but have you ever looked at to see that your want list is a lot bigger than your need list? You may want a house. You want to buy a house. But do you really need that 8-bedroom, 4-car garage house and it's just you? Come on. And so when I say that, see, y'all started laughing, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell on myself. Can I be honest with you tonight? I'm always honest, but I'm going to be very transparent. When I first got to a certain level in life, I was outside of ministry, and I was like, I'm going to buy me a nice home. I found the house I wanted. And that first home that I bought after I'd already had a couple houses before then. But when I got to a certain level of status, and it wasn't about showing people what I could do, it was just my wish list. So I went out and I bought a 9-bedroom, 5-bathroom home, 4-car garage, theater room, upstairs kitchen, downstairs gourmet kitchen, 3rd floor, elevator in the house, pool in the house, 2-lane bowling alley in the house. I didn't need any of that, but I wanted it, and I felt like I was big and bad enough to buy it. So what I'm talking about with this scripture is, what I didn't do in that season was I didn't count up the cost. Because there's maintenance on the house, there's cleaning of the house, there's elevator maintenance, there's yard maintenance, there's pool maintenance, there's kitchen maintenance. There's a lot going on. I was so big and bad with this house, I had a bathroom in the garage in case I pulled into the garage and needed to go. And I didn't want to wait till I got in the house. I had a bathroom put in the garage. Is that a need or a want? She said, that's a want. And you're right, Pastor Nancy, that's craziness. And now I can look back on it and see that's crazy. And you know, I wasted a lot of money that I could have invested wisely and used for kingdom purposes and to bless other people in that season, but that wasn't my focus. My focus was on what I wanted for me in that season because I could afford it. But when I'm saying I didn't count up the cost, I didn't count up the cost to the point that I wasn't thinking about the fact that my property taxes were going to be $62,000 a year. I didn't count up the cost on that. Anybody here ever seen a $62,000 property tax bill? You're talking about something that'll make you faint. I'm like, oh my God. I said, I think you guys put the comma in the wrong place. She said, no, sir. You actually have the lowest property tax bill in your community. I was like, oh my God, it's time to move. But you know, I love that place so I stayed there 6 more years and paid them property taxes. I couldn't afford to do much else other than save up to pay my property taxes. But I enjoyed my house. And think about all of this space. It's me in this big place with no children, no spouse. And because I had a 4-car garage, that meant what? I needed 4 cars. Because why would you have a 4-car garage without having a car for each garage? Y'all looking at me like, this guy is crazy. But what I'm trying to get you to see is these are mistakes that I made in life, financially, that now that I'm at a different phase of life, I don't act like I did then. I don't spend money frivolously. I've taught my kids principles that they've utilized, and it's made them effective in saving. It's made them effective in their spending habits. And so, which is the purpose of me having this gentleman here tonight to share with you guys on these principles of building your box, getting built up and getting your storehouse ready so that you can be able to be real effective kingdom builders. See, now it's about building. The Bible talks about us storing up for generations. See, when you get to where you're focused on not just now, but you're focused on the generations that are in front of you, God will bless your now. Amen? He wants to bless your now, but think about where is your current focus. Are you focused on, I got to have the shoes for now. I got to have the clothes for now. I got to have the car for now. I had the car, the house, and the bills that went with it. And had I had John's saving plan back then or his spending plan, I probably wouldn't even got into that thing because I would have counted up the costs. So in addition to the spending plan, I want you to really think about counting up the costs. What is the cost of what you need? What is the cost of what you want? What is a need and what is a want? I had a lot more wants than I ever had needs. I'm going to share one last thing and I'm going to bring John up. I didn't even know how to bowl. But I wanted a bowling alley in the house. And do you know my 7 years there, I never rolled a bowling ball down a single lane in my own bowling alley in my own house. I never had time. She said, I'm trying to pay for the house. Right. I'm trying to pay the taxes on the house. And I did one of the dumbest things, and hopefully he'll touch on it. I did one of the dumbest things you could ever do. I paid cash for the house. I could have let my money been making money for me, but because I had the funds available, I said, I'm just going to pay cash for it. So I'm going to let John break down for you guys as he gets into this why I made a bad decision. Come on up here and let him have it, John.
Thank you so much. Y'all remember me talking about my ego house? That sounds like that was Troy's ego house, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you stole about half my thunder, bud. I appreciate it. So, anyway, Guys, how are y'all doing this evening? It is so good to see you guys again. Thank you so much. All the folks that came back, man, we really appreciate it. It's so good to see you. New faces, I see a few new faces too. Thanks for joining us so much. Again, I'm John Barry. I'm a certified financial planner. I got a business out west of here called Corner Post Financial Planning. And I've been asked to speak with you guys about finances. And when we're talking about the kingdom, we're talking about finances and how we can use those finances for the kingdom. If we don't have control over our own finances, there's no way we can help the kingdom. So I want you guys to take the time to learn about how we can control our own finances. And last week, that's really what we were focused about, that spending plan. Remember, spending plans are better than a diet because we want to know where every dollar goes. That's it. That's all we want to know. And we're talking about this because we're trying to recover from that, what I call the Christmas hangover. You know, and that feeling where we spent too much money between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and now we're in the recovery period of January. So here we are trying to get cleaned up. You know, and sadly, like those pounds that we put on during Christmas, those bills kind of hang around too. And we got to deal with those bills. Here's the saddest thing, you guys. There are so many people now that borrow money for Christmas. And that amount that they're borrowing is increasing year after year now. There's one bank that reported they've seen a substantial increase in the amount of borrowing just for Christmas last year. Can you guys imagine? That turns what's supposed to be a period of joy into a period of dread. And we don't want that. And I sure don't want that for you guys. So when we talk about this tonight, and we talk about coming up with a plan for your money. You know, here at Corner Post, we tend to work with folks who are in their late 40s to early 60s who are planning for retirement because you're starting to get to that point where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And retirement is just around the corner. But you were using Proverbs. One of my favorites is Proverbs 21, where it says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste." So I gave you guys a sheet last week. We were talking about a plan for your money. So I tell you what, if you guys could put up the first slide for me, please, with that worksheet. As we talked about that first step of writing down your process, did everybody do their homework? Who all did their homework? Listen, we got a couple folks. Y'all, okay, I got to show you. One of my favorite books. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. I love it. Yeah, people are already. Guys, if you did your homework, please, I would love for you to have this book. And if you've already read it, pass it on to somebody, especially somebody young, because you guys already know the importance of it. And this book is so easy to read. I've got two boys, 23 and 21 now, and I made them read it several times. And I give these out of my office. I would love for you guys, if you did your homework, please come and take a book. I would love for you to. Pastor Troy, would you mind handing these out? Thank you so much. Y'all, that book is so influential to me. And when I was getting started, I remember the first time I read it when I was 21, and I never knew. The book talks about how not only saving money, but then putting that money to work for you, like Troy was just talking about a little bit ago. And we'll talk on that here a little bit later. But when we work with clients, the reason why we do that first step of coming up with a spending plan is because we need to know how much money it's going to cost them to live every month. And if we don't know how much it's going to cost them, if we understate how much it's going to cost, then our clients are at risk of not having enough money saved for retirement. If they don't have enough money saved, they're at risk of outliving their money, or worse, using up the money because they spend it faster than they planned. I've got 4 more books here. There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've got to make sure we know how much it's going to cost so that we know how much we need to save up for retirement. So that whole worksheet, you guys, is not to make you feel ashamed or embarrassed of what you spend. The purpose of the worksheet is to help you understand where your money is going. Troy took my verse, but I'm going to use it anyways. In Luke 14, suppose one wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? And that's the purpose of this, is to estimate the cost of how much it's going to cost you to live. So this worksheet on the screen right here, we've got more out in the lobby. You guys take as many as you need. Again, wanted you guys to use three months of sheets, 1 sheet for every month, but we've also got it on my website at cornerpostfinancial.com. You're more than welcome to download it there, and you can use it as well. But remember, as you're doing this, the whole purpose of this exercise is to become aware of where your money is going. We don't want anybody to feel ashamed, like the gentleman you're talking about who spent $9,100 on hot water through dry beans. But that's okay. I mean, now he's identified it. Now he can start. Y'all, I did the math right quick. That's $75 a day he was spending, or $25 a day he was spending on coffee. So basically 3 times a day he was hitting Starbucks. So that's a lot of Starbucks. But we all have places, though, and this shows it. We all have places where we spend money, and we don't realize we're aware of it. Last week we talked about the lady who spent $10,800 eating out. And that, I had a couple that we were working with. Y'all, they made great money, but they were literally eating their money. They came to me and they said, we can't figure out why we can't save enough. So we went through the worksheet. Y'all, they ate out every single meal on the weekends, and they ate out lunch every day. Y'all, they were spending $2,000 a month eating out, and they had no clue. And if you can afford it, that's really great, but they couldn't. And I share this with you guys because honestly, here's the thing. Eating out is a huge money suck. I mean, we just lose our money eating out. And let's be honest, is that restaurant food really that good? No. Service sometimes we got to question as well, y'all. But honestly, so what are we doing? If we're eating out, are we paying for the food or are we paying for convenience? It's convenience, isn't it? And I get it, you guys, we are so busy. We have so many demands. What we're really buying is just a chance to sit down and let somebody else cook for us. Let somebody else do the dishes. And I understand we all feel tired and it's busy, but we need to be aware of that cost. And that's what we want to accomplish with this. Another common problem, again, Pastor Troy talked about and I talked about, my ego house. When we have that ego house and it was the maintenance and it was the taxes, and I get it though, we want to live in a nice house. We want to have a safe neighborhood. We want to be in a school district that is really good, that we know our kids will get a great education. Yeah, we'll talk about school choice later. But, we even want a big old kitchen. We just said we don't even know, but we want that big fancy TV kitchen that we see on TV. But if it's too much house, we see how it affects people's plans so dramatically. In fact, I've got a client. You were talking about living in that house by yourself. I've got a client who retired. Client is in their 60s, and they live by themselves in a 5-bedroom house. This house is 120 years old. They spend their entire retirement savings just to keep up with this house. I mean, it's to the point now where they are almost out of money, and they're not even 68 years old yet. Y'all, it's not worth it for the house. We've got to be willing to let those things go. So when you guys did your worksheet, did you get your number? Do you know what your number is every month? That's what we want to do, is we need that number. And here's the thing, y'all. The average household income here in the north part of the Metroplex is $80,000 a year. The household, not individuals, but the household. So if you make $80,000 a year and you spend $95,000, man, do the math. It's not working too good, is it, y'all? But, when you do that $95,000 a year, you got to feel stress. We've been there. We've all felt that stress. Troy was talking about it earlier. How about, though, if you earn $80,000 a year and you only spend $60,000? Now you got a little bit of breathing room. Now you got some wiggle room with your money. Feel a little more comfortable. So I share these stories with you just to see how easy it is to lose control of your money. And when we lose control of our money, now it's controlling us. And that just adds to the stress of our lives, and it makes us vulnerable to those life happens situations, y'all. We've seen those when life happens. One of my favorite verses about that, though, is Ephesians 5:15-17. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Hey, can y'all change the next slide for me? So, you guys have all flown, right? And when you fly, you see that flight attendant come by and they've got that little oxygen mask, don't they? When that oxygen mask drops down, what does that mean? It means you're in for a bumpy ride, doesn't it? It means things are about to get really uncomfortable. It means that cabin is about to lose air pressure. When it loses air pressure, oxygen gets scarce. Now, when you have oxygen deprivation and you start struggling to breathe, you start making bad decisions. You start not thinking clearly. You might even panic. So what does the flight attendant tell us to do when that mask comes down? Put your mask on first, right? Because you're not going to be thinking right. And you've got to put that mask on so you can think right. I'm here to tell you, you need to have a financial oxygen mask. It's a savings account. You need that savings account to give you that breathing room when something happens, one of those life happens situations. Because when life happens and you don't have that financial oxygen mask, it's easy for you to panic. It's easy for you to not make clear decisions. It's easy for you to get overwhelmed and maybe even be distracted. But that properly installed mask, it makes those bumpy rides a little less terrifying. So what I would suggest is that those of you who are truly upside down right now, you've done the numbers and you're upside down and you make less than you spend, or if you've got those debts that are just so high, they're overwhelming, sit back and take a breath. Proverbs 22, I thought you were going to take my Proverbs 22. The borrower is the slave to the lender. We've all heard that, correct? And we're not supposed to be a slave to anything. We're supposed to take care and listen to the Lord. So if you feel that way, I encourage you to get into a program to tackle those debts, to help get everything right-sized. Y'all, there are some fantastic programs to get that debt under control. You can either get online. They've got online classes. They've got some great books. Y'all, there's some with some really great speakers, far better than me, that can help you figure out what to do. But I would encourage you, work with somebody. If you need to get a personalized plan, get one put together so that you can get back to zero. Because if you're in that situation right now, and you don't do anything, you can find yourself in that same situation this time next year. And we know nobody wants to be in that situation next year. That's why we're here now, isn't it? We want to get this under control. So just do something. Remember that saying I had last week, done is better than perfect. So let's just get started and do something. But let's say everything's good. Once you've got that situation where you've got more money than month, I love that Dave Ramsey saying, you got more money than month, you got some breathing room. Now you can start thinking a little bit more clearly. Now we get to do the fun stuff. Because you've got that money left over, and we're going to talk about what to do with that leftover money. These are the funds that you're going to use to start building a savings account. There's really 3 simple ways to build a savings account. The first one is have savings. There are so few people that really have savings. The second one, paying off debt. Nobody thinks about it, but paying off debt is a great way to save money. The last one and the third one is investing. And remember, there's a difference between saving and investing. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's talk about what is key to every successful plan. And it's a solid foundation of savings. Your savings buckets, think of them, it's money that you need to have in 3 years or less. 3 years. So if you're going to buy a car or you're going to buy a house, that money needs to be in a savings account and it needs to be stable. Or if you are, I don't even know where, I need you to switch a slide, please, for me. There we go. Or if that's money that you're going to use for an emergency. So if you need it there when the car breaks down, the transmission goes out, the water heater goes out, that's your emergency. So think of these as buckets. You've got a savings bucket, you've got an investment bucket, and you've got your debt bucket. So here's what we're going to do. When we talk about having money in savings, we're talking about having money in cash form. Now, I'm not talking physical cash, but I'm talking cash that's easy to get to, that's readily available. Because the primary goal of that money is that it's available when you need it and it's not tied up. You know, there's an old saying, it's not the return on my money, it's the return of my money. And that's what we want with our savings account. So we're not going to worry about how much interest it gets because the interest isn't as important as the safety. Savings is safety, and that's what it represents for us. The nice thing about a savings account, and you guys have seen it, you can open it at a bank. No, you can even open them online. There's some great online banks. And what's interesting is those online banks, a lot of times, they've got better interest rates than the physical banks do. So it's worth looking into, you guys. And remember, you can have more than one savings account. Last week I told you I've got 7 different savings accounts, and you can have more than one, and we'll talk about that because savings is about having access to your money when you need it, but we don't want to just stash it under the mattress. That puts it at too great a risk. We want to put it in the bank. It'll be a lot safer. So the first savings bucket we want to start with, would y'all turn to the next slide for me, is your emergency savings account. This is your emergency bucket. This is what you go to. As Ramsey always says, it wards off Murphy. Because you know, if it's Murphy's Law, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So this is the bucket that you're going to use when you need an emergency. Now, Ramsey always talks about $1,000. Put $1,000 in there. Y'all think that's a little dated now. I mean, every time I don't have a car that's newer than 2015. And I've always got a car in the shop, it seems like. And every time I get a call, the mechanic says, yeah, we found it's got to be this. It's going to be about $1,000. It's going to be about $800. My goodness, every time I turn around. I think you need to up that to about $2,000. So I want you guys to set your emergency bucket at $2,000. And that should be your focus on savings, is building that. Because this is your oxygen mask. When life happens, this is when you've got this $2,000. And when you use it up, man, you stop putting money elsewhere. Remember how we shifted in the spending plan? And you build it back up. But it's here to use when you need it. But once you've got the $2,000 built up in that bucket, now you got a chance for the freedom account. So this will be your second one. We call this your freedom account. And your freedom account, my firm and most firms say you should have about 3 to 6 months of savings, 3 to 6 months of expenses, in the freedom account. The reason why is this account is going to give you freedom from that miserable job. Have you guys ever had that miserable job? Y'all, I had a job straight out of college where this boss, we'd have to have a team meeting every Friday before the end of the week. But he wouldn't tell us when we were going to have it. He'd call us in when he was ready. I remember sitting in my office at 7 o'clock on a Friday waiting to have a meeting. It was the most miserable job I'd ever had. But I didn't have a freedom account. I was straight out of college. I was super poor, and I had a wife who loved me even though I couldn't afford anything. And that's when I swore I was going to get a freedom account. So build that freedom account up because that gives you freedom from that miserable job. It's a difficult goal. Very few people can accomplish it. But when you have that account, now you've got the freedom to walk in and tell that boss, I'm tired of you. I'm going to go find something else. And you can take your time to find where you want to be instead of being stuck in that job. But the other thing, the reason why we have to have it is because most people end up retiring earlier than they expected. Have you guys ever known somebody in their 60s who's been laid off? Oh, it happens so frequently. I had a group of clients. These guys all worked for the same firm. And they were working with us, saving for retirement, and they were doing great. They were right on track, and then boom, they all got laid off at once. Every one of them in their 60s, years before they planned on ever getting retired. And in fact, one of them was 6 years before he ever retired. He had a stay-at-home wife who was substantially younger than her, and she didn't even qualify for Medicare. So they had to go buy insurance out on the marketplace. Y'all, life happens, and that's where that savings gives us that place, because layoffs are some of the most common financial challenges that people face, along with car repairs, right? Home repairs, we've seen those. We've also got divorces, death of a spouse. You guys, it's that savings account that can help fix the money aspect of any of these life happens situations, and it can buy you some breathing room. And that breathing room, that freedom, that's what we're all really seeking. So one strategy we're talking about is when you have a savings account, you're going to have more than one. You're going to have that emergency one. You're going to have that freedom one. You're going to have a Christmas one. You're going to have a vacation one. You can even have a college one. It's okay to have a bunch of savings accounts. Again, I've got 7 of them. And when I talk to people and they say, well, it's kind of embarrassing. I don't put very much money in them. It's okay. It's just fine to only put, if you just put $5 in every couple months, that is awesome. Don't worry about how much money you're putting into your account because this is your plan. Nobody else's but yours. And we talked about it earlier. You've seen how big the money suck is on eating out, and it's just a few dollars. So we know that a few dollars adds up quickly. Would you put out the next slide, please? Next, let's talk about paying off debt, though. And paying off debt is a great way for savings. Doesn't that? That's how it feels when you're loaded down with debt and it gets overwhelming and you got a $62,000 tax bill every year for your house. Oh my gosh. Oh my heavens. We all know how important it is when you have debt. We want you to pay it off. But once you've built up that savings account, that emergency account, I want you to take that debt, especially the high interest debt, like credit cards, and lay them out if you've got more than one. And I'm stealing this straight from Dave Ramsey. I'm going to give him credit. He's got a thing he calls the debt snowball. I think that is a brilliant way to tackle debt. So here's what you do with your debt snowball. Let's say you've got several different credit cards, and you got debt on all those credit cards. Take those credit card bills and lay them out. Look at what the minimum payment is on each one of those and start making your minimum payment. Now, you're going to make a little extra payment to one of them so that you can start paying it off. So once you pay that one off, then you take that minimum payment plus that extra payment, you combine it with the next one. So you combine that minimum payment with the other minimum payment with that extra payment, and now you're getting basically like compound interest. You're compound tackling that debt, and you're going to pay that off. And then when that one's done, you're going to dig it, combine it, and then you're going to take your next one. Lay those out. Now, which ones do you go first? There's two different approaches. One I call the logical approach. You take those debts, you lay them out, you do the minimum payments, but you look at what's the interest rate on each one of those. And you figure out the one with the highest interest rate, because that's going to be the toughest one to get rid of, and you tackle that highest interest rate first. And then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one. Call that the logical approach. The second one, though, we call the gratifying approach. You take those debts, you lay them out, you figure out which ones you're going to do first. You've got your minimum payments, and to figure out the one you want to do first, you say, all right, which one has the lowest balance? The one that has the lowest balance, that's the one I'm going to put a little extra on. And the reason why we do that, and we call it the gratifying one, is because that means you can pay it off that much quicker. Gosh, and you just get that one W, that one win, because you got that one paid off. Yes, I'm finally getting somewhere. I'm going to move to the next one. I'm going to start paying on it. Now I'm really making some progress, and I can get in, and it feels so good to just knock those off. So we call that the gratifying method. So again, logical method, gratifying method, doesn't matter. For you, it's yours. Which one works for you? But when you focus on those, you're making minimums across the board, and you're doing a little extra on one so that you can start knocking them out. I think that is just a brilliant strategy that Ramsey has. But once you've got all that debt paid off, and we got a little bit of savings set aside, now we can talk about what's my favorite thing, investing. Now, Troy was talking about compound interest, and that's where investing comes in. Because compounding interest, remember, is you get an investment, you put it away, you get some interest on it. You leave that interest in that same investment, so now you get growth on the investment, and you get growth on the interest. And that gets you more interest, so now you're going to get more growth. Think of it this way, y'all. You guys have all seen a chessboard, right? I love this example. You take that chessboard, you put a grain of rice on the first one. Now, take the first square. The square next to it, you put 2 grains of rice. The next square, you put 4 grains of rice. The next square, you put 8 grains of rice. Then you get 16 grains of rice. There's 64 squares on a chessboard. Do you know how much rice you'll end up on by the time you get to the 64th square? 18 quintillion grains of rice. That's how compounding works. And that's what you're wanting to accomplish when you invest. So remember, there's a difference between saving and investing. Saving is money you want in 3 years or 5 years, and you want it to be there. You're not worried about interest. You just want it there when you need it, for when those life happen situations or to buy that car. Investing is for your long-term goals. Investing is going to be think of it for 10 years or more. So when you're investing for 10 years or more, you've got to have that money. That money is invested for a purpose, to give your money a chance to grow. And when you're investing, you're going to be investing in stocks most of the time. And have you guys ever had like an aunt or uncle or cousin or somebody you know said, I invested, or I knew somebody invested, and they lost everything in the market? We've heard that. A lot of times, though, there's more to the story than what they're telling you. Because you guys, the stock market itself has never gone to zero in value, not once. And the stock market has never failed to hit a record high. It fluctuates, it definitely fluctuates, and you've got to be there in it, but it never goes to zero. Investing requires you, though, to be patient. And investing is you're putting your money away. And you think of this. When you're investing for retirement because you're wanting to build a nest egg. You can never save enough money on your own to fund that nest egg. You need it to grow. It's got to go to work for you. You know, in our business, the most common long-term goal is retirement. Retirement, though, and retirement money has an enemy. It's called inflation. You guys heard about inflation? We've all kind of noticed it last few years. You know, last year, inflation was 8%. It's a 40-year high, you guys. And we saw how quickly prices increased. Well, that's what inflation is. Inflation is the cost of goods around you going up. And one of my favorite examples is milk. I mean, milk is milk, right? When I was in college in the early 90s, late 80s, I paid 99 cents a gallon for milk. I just got milk the other day at Central Market, and it was $5 for a gallon of milk. That milk's not any different. It's not any better than it was 30 some odd years ago. I don't want to talk about how old I am. But milk is milk. So why did it get so much more expensive? Because your money's worth less. When the government prints more money and gives more money out, like what happened during COVID, now there's more money in the system, your money's worth less. So it takes more dollars to buy the same thing. Well, think about what that does to your retirement. You're putting money away now that you're not going to touch for 10 years. But we already know things are going to be more expensive in 10 years than they are now. That means your money has to grow faster than inflation. Historically, inflation averages about 3% a year. Last year was an exception at 8%. And honestly, you guys, a few years before that, we were having inflation at less than 1%. It just spiked. That's why we noticed it so quickly. But historically, it averages about 3% a year. So you know what that means for you and your investments? If your investment is only getting 3% a year, you found that CD and it's paying 3%, all you're doing is keeping up with inflation. You're not getting ahead at all. You might as well just be saving it. So when you put that money to work long term, you have got to do better than inflation. Again, Troy, I'm stealing from you. That was beautiful. You know, you are working for your money. You want to get where your money is working for you. You're putting your money to work to get to retirement. That's the one thing that book talks about is how your money is working for you. Think about it this way. You're saving for retirement, so you're going to start a company. And it's called I Want to Retire Someday Incorporated. And I'm going to have the best employees I can. When I hire my employees for my I Want to Retire Someday Incorporated business, I don't want to have the employees who just come in, clock in, do what they got to do to get by and leave. I want the employees who are going to come in, and I want them to be Employee of the Month every month. Every month I want them to be. And that's what you want from your investments. You don't want your investments to just get by, get inflation. I want them to do better than me. I want them to do twice what inflation is doing because I know that I'm going to need to have that money saved up because you are saving for retirement. Y'all, your retirement is going to last 20 to 30 years. You've got to be able to save enough and have it work for you to last 20 or 30 years. And here's the thing, I'll tell you a dirty little secret. Most people spend everything they make. They're not saving. They're struggling to save, and they're spending everything they make, and they're not realizing what they're spending. That's the purpose of the sheet. We want to know where we're spending. But when you retire, that income stops. What happens to your spending? It doesn't stop, does it? Y'all, do you realize when you retire, the average person spends about 80% of what they spent while they were working? 80%. So there is no way you can save enough to cover that 80%. But it's that retirement investment that determines how comfortable your savings is going to be. That retirement investment requires a lot of discipline and a lot of sacrifice. We're asking you to invest it and let it grow. We've talked about the stock market fluctuates. You need to be willing to let it ride the fluctuations. Too many people think, oh, I'll get out when it's high. When it bottoms out, I'm going to get back in. How many people remember 2008? Remember the housing crash on 2008? Remember how we had, every Monday morning, I would turn on the TV and I'd hear about a bank that was going under. We were hearing about car companies, General Motors. It's government motors now, right? Because the government bailed them out. We had the BP oil spill, and the camera on CNBC, they had an underwater camera showing that oil spewing out of that thing for weeks. And every time I saw, another bank has disappeared. You guys remember Washington Mutual, Wachovia, First Union? They've all disappeared. And that was the best time to put all your money back in the market. I didn't have the courage to do it. There's no way. And I was in this business. I was holding on to my desk for dear life going, when is this going to end? But you know what? We stayed in it and we rode it out. And staying in it and riding it out, the S&P almost hit a brand new high today. Y'all, the S&P is up 1,500% since then. It's riding it out is how you make money in investing, not timing it, because nobody ever knows how to time. But, we had the shutdown in 2020, right? Who saw the shutdown coming? None of us. You know what? If we were smart enough to get out at the end of 2020, we had the shutdown, but a great time to put that money in, but nobody sees that. And in fact, that's a great example of why you need to diversify. Let's talk about this Boeing Airlines, or airplanes. At the beginning of the shutdown in 2020, or at the start of 2020, they were trading at over $300 a share, $340 to be exact. At the end of 2020, with the shutdown, it was at $204. Let's contrast that to Apple. We've all got our iPhones, right? iPads, we've seen those. Apple, at the start of 2020, was trading at $81 a share. By the end of 2020, it was $132 a share. That's a 60% increase. But who's got the courage to bet all in one? We don't want to ask you to bet all in one. We're asking you to invest. And when you invest, you're going to have a little bit of everything. You might have some Exxon, you might have some Boeing, you might have some Apple. When you invest, not all companies do great at the same time. Not all companies do poorly. Some do great, some do poorly at the exact same time. And that's why we want to own a little bit. That's why Apple and Boeing are such a good contrast. But when you invest, you don't have to just invest in stocks. And when we talk about stocks, we talk about bonds as well. Troy's got a great saying, I love it. Bonds equal bondage. Do you guys remember Troy's talking that up here on that Wednesday? Bonds equal bondage. So bonds are a loan that you are going to make. And you're making this to a government entity, like a school district, a city. You might even make it to a business like Apple. And on that loan, they're going to agree to pay you interest. And they're going to pay you that interest usually every 90 days. Nice thing about bonds is they don't fluctuate a whole lot because we know what we're going to get. I'm going to loan you $1,000. You're going to pay me 5% interest. And I know when it matures in 20 years, I get my $1,000 back and I collected the interest. So they don't fluctuate a whole lot. Considered a safe investment. But they do fluctuate. Last year was the worst year in bond market in U.S. history. Before last year, bonds had never lost more than 6% in value. Y'all, last year, the U.S. Treasury was down 19%. And got to hold on to it. Now they've had a record year this year. So, that's why you hold on to it. But here's the thing. Bonds equal bondage because they use those money to build schools. They use those money to build hospitals. They use those taxpayer dollars. So when you have those bonds and it feels safe, there's a trade-off for that safety. Remember who we talked about the inflation, or the enemy of long-term investing is inflation. Most of those times, those bonds aren't paying you much interest beyond inflation, if at all. So you're really not going anywhere. So bonds are great to save your wealth, but not to grow your wealth. But when we talk about investing, we talk about where to invest. One of the most common places to invest is the company retirement plan. A lot of companies offer the ability to take a few dollars out of your paycheck and invest it on your behalf. You've probably all heard of the 401k, correct? Yeah, that is one of the most common ways to invest for retirement. So if you've got that way to invest, what do you invest in? So Troy mentioned earlier, mutual funds. That is the most common way to invest in. In fact, it's pretty much the only way you can invest in 401ks is a mutual fund or what they'll call ETFs. They're similar. They both represent a basket of companies. And so when you invest in it, it'll be a basket of big U.S. companies or a basket of small U.S. companies or maybe a basket of companies that are headquartered in India or a combination of all of them. Those funds can also be bonds. So you can have some bonds that have been issued by Fort Bend ISD. You can have some bonds that have been issued by Waxahachie ISD. You can have some bonds that have been issued by Baylor Scott and White, all in one basket. So when you pick these funds, you could pick one that just does U.S. companies, or you could do a combination of them. But the main thing is you want them to beat inflation. That is your biggest enemy, is you are focusing on beating inflation. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, you know what, my workplace doesn't offer a 401k, please don't tune me out. I'm going to talk about an option for you guys here in a little bit. But when we talk about investment types that are commonly available to investors and we talk about these mutual funds, we want these funds to be made up of different companies, and we want you guys to think about picking them with the way that you are most comfortable for investing. You know, you can go anywhere from aggressive to conservative to anywhere in between. But you've got to figure out what style is most comfortable for you, and you have to be willing to ride it out. One of the nice things about a 401k is that companies will offer a match. Now, sometimes it's about 3 to 5%. So that match means, you guys, that if I put in 3% of my salary, the company's going to give me 3% of my salary as well. For doing nothing more than saving for your retirement, they're going to give you some extra money. That is a fantastic way to get a pay raise and do nothing but take care of yourself. So I love the company match, and we need to think about what the company match can do for us. But a lot of times the company match isn't enough. When you think about saving for next level, saving for your retirement, you want to have a really good retirement, you really should set a goal of 10%. Now, I know what you're thinking, man, the company match is 3%. If I'm just putting 3% in, 10% is a long ways away. Let's do the math. You're saving 3%. They're putting in 3%. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 is a heck of a lot closer to 10 than 3 is, right? You guys, when you're saving 6%, that is so easy to just put away. You're not going to miss it. And the easiest way to increase it, every time you get a pay raise, increase what you put in. You can even increase if you just want 1% every year. And you'll eventually get to 10% very quickly. If I'm not mistaken, 10 from 6 is 4. 4 years, you're up at 10%. And at 1% increments, it's so easy to do. Think about this. If you make $35,000 a year and you get paid twice a month, 3% is $44. We talked last week about reducing what we pay to eat out and reducing eating out. That $44 is 2 meals. Want to increase it? You know, we're going to increase it next year by 1%. At $35,000, 1% a paycheck is less than $15 a check. Really going to miss an extra $15 once we're comfortable putting in that 44? It's that simple, you guys, and it adds up so quickly. It's amazing how quickly it goes in there, and you don't even miss it. And here's the thing. The government allows you to put in $20,000 a year in your 401k. So you can think really big. A lot of folks don't, y'all. Honestly, a lot of folks don't. It's tough. We're all trying to save what we can to get by. Make your goal 10%, and don't beat yourself up when you're not doing 20,000, because most folks aren't. I got doctors as clients who can't even do that. So think about small increments of increases that adds up over time so beautifully. And remember, these funds are invested for retirement. It's not a savings account. It's not an emergency fund. It's for retirement. I can't tell you how frustrating it is when we have clients who come in and take money out of their 401k because life happened. When you take money out of that 401k, you've taken it out of the chance to grow. I mean, what if you did that and you pulled it out in 2008? You've missed all that growth since 2008. Here's the other thing. When you take money out of that 401k, you've agreed with the government. They haven't taxed you when you put it in there. So you've agreed to the government, I'm not going to touch it until I retire. Government says retirement age is 59 and a half. I pull it out before 59 and a half, the government is going to slap a 10% penalty on what I take out. But guess what else they do? The government says, you know what? That was money we didn't tax when you put it away. You got to pay income tax on that. So here we go. Let's do the math again. If I'm in the 20% tax bracket, I pay 20% income tax. I pulled some money out of my 401k. They penalized me 10%. Now they taxed it at 20%. I just gave the government 30% of my money. Who thinks the government does a good job with my money to begin with? And now I'm going to give them 30%? Y'all, that's why we want a savings account. That's why we call it a financial oxygen mask. We want that money in retirement to stay in retirement. We don't need to give the government any more of our money than they're taking already. So, preach it to the choir, I think. All right, now I can hear a few of you guys thinking out there, I don't have that company plan. How am I going to be able to save? I got good news. If you don't have a company plan or you're self-employed, first thing you can do is set up what's called an individual retirement account. You guys heard of an IRA? That's right, we got IRAs. And there's two different kinds, y'all. There's a traditional IRA and there's a Roth IRA. And we won't get into the nuances of them, but one of them is pay taxes later, one of them is pay taxes now. And figuring out which one's right for you, yeah, you have to think about how long you're going to put it in there. But here's the thing. When you do that individual retirement account, you can do it so easily, and they can be opened up anywhere. There's so many places. You can do it at a bank. You can do it at an investment firm. You can do it online. And you can put, if a married couple over 50, they can put $8,000 apiece this year into their IRA. That's $16,000 that you can put away for retirement in your IRA. Now, if you're self-employed, you've got options also that are beyond the $16,000. You can do a solo 401k where you can put up to $60,000 a year in there, or you can do what's called a SEP IRA where you'll put 25% of your income into that SEP IRA. And you just got to figure out which situation works best for you. But if you don't have anything, starting with an IRA is a great place to get started. Most of the individuals that invest with our firm for retirement, they just have us draft their checking account every month. And most of them, if they can max out, they're going to max out. But I tell you what, if they can't max out, they're going to do what they can. Because remember, what do we say? Done is better than perfect. So let's just do something. Because everybody's vision of financial success is different. Your vision of success is your own, and every situation is different. There is a Bible verse that I love regarding this, and you guys have all heard it. It's the parable of the talents or the bags of money in Matthew. Right here, it's Matthew 25:14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold. To another, 2 bags, and to another, 1 bag, each according to his ability. And then he went on his journey. Did they all have the same amount? No. None of us is going to have the same amount either. So don't compare yourself to somebody else. Start where you are and just do what you're doing. Y'all, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't waste your time on what somebody else is doing. Take care of you. Stay focused on your goals. You'll be a heck of a lot happier. It took me 40 years to figure out how comparison is a thief of joy. I hated I'd look at those guys that had better hair and bigger muscles and fancier cars. You know what? Now I'm fine. My wife still loves me, and she doesn't care that I'm going bald and getting flabby. So I'm blessed with that. But the most important thing is to have that financial oxygen mask, that savings account that's going to give you the buffer when life happens. We need to have that financial oxygen mask in place. I want to leave you with this on John 9:4. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. So here's what I want to ask you guys to do. If you didn't do your homework, I want you to go out and do it. If you did it, go back and polish it. Figure out what that number is. Here's what I want you guys to think about. I want you guys to be thinking about saving at least 20%. 10% in savings, 10% for retirement investments. If you're not there, don't beat yourself up. That's just that's like your goal. But we want you to start somewhere. And that spending plan will help you figure out where I can save for savings, where I can invest for retirement. So figure out what that number is. And here's my challenge for you this week. If you don't have a 401k, if you're not doing it, sign up this week. You should still be able to sign up right now. If enrollment period is over with at your company, go do an IRA. I would love everybody to start an IRA this week. Y'all, you can open an IRA for $10. You can do it online. There's some places who'll do it for free online for $10. And I would be so thrilled if I could hear you guys did that when we come back next week. I want to thank you guys, though, for showing up tonight and coming back and joining us this evening. Next week, we're going to kind of take a bigger picture. We're going to talk about how we can protect what you've worked for and how we can take care of your family members as well. Again, I'm John Berry, certified financial planner. Thanks for your time, y'all. I appreciate it.
Are in the house tonight. And so just, I'm coming straight to you. So just as an example or model of what John has done, I'll give my example. So my investment example is a little bit different. So I have what I have. My rule is that I live off of 70% of my income. 10% goes to God, 10% to investment, 10% to saving. So I make sure I don't do anything as far as my necessities or even my wants outside of that 70%. So I looked at my income and I determined 70%, this is what I'm going to live off of because I'm looking ahead to my future. I want to be able to leave something for my children and my children's children like the Bible says we're supposed to. Amen? So, come on up here, Andy.
John, thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you.
Have a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Spent 15 years of my life working for, at the time, Louisville, and then turned into Toyota of Louisville. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman who owned it, Renee, he had invited me and a lot of the employees to invest in the 401k. Mm-hmm. Well, lo and behold, just about 5 years ago, he winds up selling the dealership. Mm-hmm. Now, that means I'm working for a new dealership out of Arkansas. Mm-hmm. What happened to my 401k?
That's a really common question because ownership changes quite a bit. So, two things can happen. Most of the time, what happens when you have a 401k and a company acquires where you're working, your old 401k is moved over into the new plan. So whoever runs the new plan, they absorb those assets. They map your investments over to the investments they have that are similar goals. That is frequently what happens. If the acquiring company doesn't have a 401k, a lot of times they will just send you a letter that says, hey, the plan is closing. You need to take these assets and put them into an IRA. And then you will move them into an IRA. So, and if you do that, you want to code that IRA as a rollover IRA, not a contributory, but a rollover. And the reason why, and you don't want to add any assets to it, because if you go to work for another company that has a 401k, you can take those assets from that IRA that's titled contributory, and you can move it into that company 401k. So now you got, that way you got everything back in one place. So, but that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah.
Any other questions? I see one over here. Coming right to you.
John, you mentioned the, what was it, the solo IRA for
Solo 401k.
Okay, so
Yes.
solo. How does that work? You said you can put in 60% of
60,000.
Oh, 60,000.
Yeah, up to.
Up to
So it
60,000.
depends on how much you pay yourself. There's, government formulas involved. But basically, it's a company, when you're self-employed and you've incorporated, set S Corp or C Corp, you can set up this 401k as long as you don't have any employees except for a spouse. You can put this 401k in plan and you can start contributing out of your pay, and then your company that you own will match as well. And so you can do a match and you can put a profit sharing on there as well. So now your company match and your company profit sharing both go into your investment account. And you can fund all that with pre-tax dollars so that you reduce what you're paying in taxes to the government at that time. That's kind of how it works. You really need to sit down with your CPA, and they can help you figure out how much you can put away from the profit sharing side, and they can also help you make sure that you've got it mapped out correctly. But that's kind of the basics of a solo 401k. Does that make sense?
You got another question on that one? You had another question? Okay.
Nope. Okay. Thanks for asking.
And if any of you looking for a CPA, you know, one of the things that we always say, it's always in the house. So I don't know if Eli is here tonight. Is Eli here? Come on, stand up, Eli, so everybody know who you are. Eli is one of our CPAs that I know of. So somebody that you can sit down with and have these types of discussions that's in our house. Amen? Amen. Any other questions? Okay, I see. Light in my eye a little bit.
Yeah, again, I appreciate everything you're saying. I wish I'd known this 20, 30 years ago, but would it be better to pay off your high-interest credit cards or get the savings plan, or, I mean, which one should come first, I guess?
So first is your emergency bucket, that $2,000. Once you got that $2,000, then focus on the debt. Tackle that debt. And then once you got the debt, then you can start building your freedom account. Saving for retirement, I would like for, if you have the ability, once you've got that $2,000, that you're still saving for retirement while you're servicing that debt. Because time can be your biggest ally when you're saving for retirement. And if you can, especially if you've got a company plan. But you really need to take a look at what percentage of revenue and what percentage of your revenue it takes to service debt. And that's where, but first and foremost, start with that emergency savings account, because that just makes everything so much more bearable. Yeah.
And what he's saying with the emergency savings account, it truly does make it that much more bearable. I probably did a little excess when it comes to that, because what I did was I actually set up, and I still have it this way, I have an emergency account for each one of my vehicles. Has its own emergency account. My house has an emergency account. My lake house has an emergency account. So I have strategically, and I'm putting money into all of these things for wherever an emergency may occur. And my kids think that all of them are for them. But they're not for them. They're for these particular things that they've been allocated to. So if I have what was it, a few years ago, we had that big freeze, what they call Snowmageddon.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a pipe bust in the garage. And I was hearing this noise in the house. And I'm looking all through the house, upstairs, downstairs, all around. And I go to get in my car, and the water is shooting through a pinhole in the garage into the side of one of my cars. And I'm like, oh, my God. But thankfully, you have the emergency fund for the house, and you know a handyman. And so you call the handyman. And so this was the funny thing. So I didn't call my handyman buddy first because he's retired. So I called all of these people that are supposed to do the work, but because everybody was having an issue, nobody was available to come at least even shut the water off. So I've been one of those people traditionally. I'm sure none of you are like this. I've been one of those people traditionally. I don't know anything about turning off water. I always call somebody to do that. That ain't my thing. And I know most women think every man, that's what they do. I'm going to tell you, that ain't me. I'm going through the directory, and I'm going to figure out whose job that is, and I'm going to get them to come shut the water off. And I'm going to call the next person, figure out whose job that is, and get them to come fix it. So thankfully, I called my good longtime friend Chuck, who's here tonight, and Chuck came to the rescue. Chuck shut the water off, and we walked through, and he showed me how to fix my own pipe. And I was like, you mean it's that easy? And I didn't realize how easy it was. He did. He showed me how to shut off the water. So now I learned something that, see, these are other little skills in addition to the saving, because think about how much more water my water bill is, because I let that water run for 3 days before I called Chuck. So that water was just shooting out. My water bill was just going up. So my emergency fund, some of that needed to go toward that water bill. So, but I'm just saying, these are certain things that you want to be prepared for, because you never know when they're going to come up. And, you know, I know that probably some of the guys probably like, you know, you're a guy, you supposed to, no, I wasn't raised in that type of household. My dad called somebody for everything. We had, you know how you have the list of emergency household contacts on the refrigerator? We had the list of who to call for what. Who to call for to change the tire, who to call for everything. It wasn't a you go do it. Thank God that I'm at a place, at least I know how to change my own tire, something he didn't know how to do. But any more questions? Any more questions? Oh, wow. This is good. You guys got a lot of good homework, huh? Come on, Pastor Nancy, close out our stream audience. She's been sitting here taking copious notes tonight.
You did. You saw me taking notes. Okay, disclaimer here. My daddy could fix anything. And then I married Honey. Which is part of the marriage class that we teach. Next time, we put it on, you can come and share what happens when you marry a man that you're just in love with and you're just, and then all of a sudden you discover he's not like my daddy.
John is like me.
I wasn't going to go there, but you are spot right on. Yeah, I will call and get it done. No, he doesn't either. He doesn't either. I so appreciate what you're teaching us. The former banker in me, my heart just goes, yes. Please understand that interest, that's how banks can afford to have the biggest building in every single neighborhood. And what I didn't understand when I was, first starting out in banking, I don't pay high interest if I have a lot of money to loan. So my interest rate doesn't go up with how much I care about you or even how much I care about the community. If I'm short on money to loan, because that's how I make my money, then I'm going to pay a more interest rate to you. And then once I have more than enough money to lend out, then I'm going to lower the interest rate. We're not bad people as bankers. We're in there to make money, and we also have a whole bunch of those funny people that we call shareholders that demand we have a profit. So understand, you're dealing with organizations, and by the way, savings and loans have different requirements than banks do, and credit unions have very different standards from what banks do. This is by the government. So do your investigation, and if you don't even understand any of the terminology, get his phone number, because he knows a lot. Amen? So thank you for being here. And Stream family, we are so glad that you're with us tonight. And as always, I offer my email is nancy.cole@newbeginnings.org. So if you have a question that you would like to submit, send me an email, and we'll make sure that Pastor Troy gets that question so that we can answer your information as well. Thanks for being with us. And Stream family, God bless. We'll see you Sunday. And if you're a woman, tune in tomorrow night. Well, a man too, because Pastor Tiz is going to be in the house at Ladies' Night Out. So good night. We'll see you next Wednesday.